I thought I would start at pretty much the same point as on Pesalo began his talk. That Sunday, October 9th, I was much lower down the hill. I live in a log cabin, and so there's probably half an hour to 45 minutes of activity going on up the hill before I knew about it. And I heard something going on. There were air horns, but we had an old air horn code where you're supposed to, if it was a fire, you're supposed to hold your air horn down until it runs out of juice. But that wasn't what I heard. I heard lots of little blasts. But it was a fire. We just didn't know you can't use air horns that way because we'd never tried it. So my first thought was, somebody's injured, but there's so many air horns that it doesn't make sense for me to try to somehow get up that hill and help them out. They'll be coming down. I'm not sure I need to. I'm not any good at helping injured people. But then I heard people coming down and they were talking about, there's a fire, we need to evacuate. And so when I heard that, I started moving. And then somebody knocked on my door and told me the same thing. So I packed some stuff and got down here. Helped out a bit with keeping track of the guests. Things. Ajahn Raṭṭhapāla was in the lead, and it's a good leader. We organized everything, and somehow, I'm glad he was able to figure out the logistics of how to move the vehicles around and get them all loaded. And I remember, I think he told me, okay, now is the time to get in a vehicle. And Ajahn Rapanos and Ajahn Sek had already basically climbed, or were about to climb into the van. And my thought was, I think I'll go with them. And that was a good idea. I spent 11 weeks out on Dhamma, a remote monastery in the Burmese border, with Ajahn Rapanos. So in a way, I was quite used to facing uncertainty with him, because living at Dhamma is an exercise in uncertainty. And it was certainly going beyond, living there was certainly going beyond all limits I've had. My previous camping experience had been like 2 nights in the Chiricahua Mountains. Dhamma border is, Thai-Burmese border is very different territory. And so Ajahn Rapanos was a great leader then, and I had some confidence in him. So I was glad to be riding in the same vehicle as him, even though I had absolutely no clue what was going to happen. And I think it was Anagarg or Gary driving. I believe Debbie was in the front seat. Maybe Ton Sampano in the back seat with me, not quite sure. But we made it across the creek crossings, made it to Mariposa Market, and then to the community center. And when we got to the community center, still us in the van, and at that point it was about, I don't know, maybe it might have been 4:30 in the morning. It was still dark. And we were there, and Ajahn Rapanos said, let's meditate. I was like, okay, so I think most of Debbie had to go inside because she handles logistics. She's done that for a long time, and there were logistics that Debbie had to handle. But certainly the back seat, we all stayed. The four of us just sitting there meditating. And it's a really good thing to do, because it's our normal routine. 4:35 in the morning, we're meditating. And at that point, things were so uncertain that actually there wasn't much else for us to do. The ones, since, there wasn't logistics, really for us to deal with. And there we were. So I really appreciated that aspect of Ajahn Suripanyo's leadership right from the beginning, focusing on the spiritual aspect of what we were doing, recognizing when it was necessary to move and when it was good to stay still. And I can remember just after it started to become dawn, and then it was like, okay. And Ajahn Suripanyo said, basically called the meditation to a close, and it was time to go into the community center and face whatever it was we had to face, which at that point was not known. And I said to Ajahn Suripanyo, in reality, Abhayagiri is not our home. And Ajahn Suripanyo said, that's right. Well, that was very good. And just to have that perspective, you don't know what's going to happen, but at least intellectually and to some extent, definitely experiencing impermanence right there. There are the teachings. And so from the Civic Center, we moved on to the high school, and in one way, things were really uncertain. There was no cell phone communication in Willits. Well, no cell phone, no landlines, no nothing. That was the day to have a satellite internet in Willits. If you had satellite internet, it would have worked. But I don't think many people did. And so we didn't know what was going on. And there was also ash falling out of the air at that time. It was I can remember doing walking meditation, and the air was pretty smoky, but there's, just ash falling. Don't know. But the American Red Cross was organizing the high school, and from what we saw, they were doing a great job. We thought we would have to spend the night, and they gave us all beds in the gymnasium where they were putting everybody else. And then Ajahn Raṭṭhapāla explained to them that monks have a rule where we can't, we shouldn't be lying down in the same room as a woman. And that one's a pretty strict rule. So the Red Cross moved us to, okay, we can open up another building. So I remember they moved us to the weight room, and they put a big sign out front, Monastery. And so they gave us this was great. I don't know if they had training in how to sort of deal with a tribe, which is what we really were. We weren't a collection of individuals. It was great how they just were able to respond with what was really appropriate for basically a tribe instead of a family. And then, I can remember standing around. Ajahn Raṭṭhapāla went north, contacted Ajahn Pasano. We learned that both Mettaka's place and the city of 10,000 Buddhas had offered us a place to stay. And I can remember standing in a circle and talking about whether to move or whether to go. And it was, and again, smoky and ash falling out of the sky. But the shelter said Highway 20 was open, so they thought we could go. And so we went, and then I remember packing up all of our beds and bringing them back to the gymnasium so the Red Cross could use them for other people. And another bit of uncertainty moving across Highway 20, because at that point I don't think any of us had seen maps of where the fires were. The fire was nowhere close to Highway 20, and that was, we only had the Red Cross assurance of that, but we made it, and it was such a relief to be out of the ash fall. It's like, okay, here's a place where there isn't this fire dropping ash, and so, as our I was impressed with the training of, Mettaka's place. I think many people have been here. It's not a big place. So, but we had, I think it was about 20 men to pack into Mettaka's Dhamma hall. We, just slept feet pointing out, heads pointing in, about 3 or 4 feet between each person, sort of packed in there. We're trying to absolutely minimize the use of the toilet to keep Mettaka's septic system okay, because it certainly wasn't, it was already having problems, and it sure wasn't designed for 20 people. But, yeah, my senses of mood seemed pretty good. Ajahn Siripano gave a fantastic Dhamma talk that night. It was not recorded like most fantastic Dhamma talks that are right in the moment. You just, talking about just uncertainty, this is reality. And yeah, then we went on to woke up, packed our stuff, our training is that if you move into a place, you remember where everything is and you put it all back. And it was great because everybody had that mentality. It's like, how do we move everything back? Just the way Mettaka had it here. And I think we might have even vacuumed the place. Just keeping, even with all this uncertainty, just keeping the routines, keeping our practice. It's why we train, because when you've trained, then you know how to do it, even when the heart can be very unsettled and you don't know what's going on, but you still know how to function as a monastic. And Mettaka, I remember, Mettaka fed us we went to Denny's and had, basically, there were only 3 options, but huge numbers of, 20 orders of waffles, 20 orders of pancakes, and 20 orders of eggs. And so you could have pancakes, waffles, or eggs, all very simple. I think we ate a lot, but it seemed very appropriate. And that was the first time we saw the television screen, and they were showing pictures of the even bigger fire down south in Santa Rosa. So it was an interesting contemplation that we were actually in the small disaster. And the big stuff was happening down south. Wow. So, and we went on, drove past Hindi Woods, headed to City of 10,000 Buddhas, and arrived at City of 10,000 Buddhas. Yeah, they greeted us very warmly. We had Ajahn Jodipalo had to make a choice. They offered us, well, you can either stay with us at the City of 10,000 Buddhas or stay at the Sudana Center. The Sudana Center would be, you'd be able to do more of your own stuff there. And Ajahn Jodipalo, you have to make a quick decision, and he said, let's stay here. That was a good move. Really helpful to have the communities together. And the monks about doubled the monastic population of the City of 10,000 Buddhas. The monks. The nuns vastly outnumber the monks there. But we had, instead of about 10 monks, they had about 20 monks. And we learned how to live according to their routines and help out. And when Vipassana arrived, I think about either 1 or 2 days after we did, he was there, and Ajahn Kunadhammo, they both came back from the East Coast. And it was, I felt quite at home, because I'd lived at the City of 10,000 Buddhas for 5 weeks as a layperson. It was strange. In one way, there was this very, very impending disaster, which was truly disastrous for many of our neighbors. And yet, I never, I don't ever think during any time during that whole period I felt sort of traumatized. It was, and yeah, the support from people was just amazing. So yeah, we came back to a basically undamaged monastery, and we were thinking, we were thinking, well, what are we going to eat? I mean, I can remember the thing that was, one of the things that was damaged was the refrigerator had been off for 3-4 days, so I can remember cleaning things out of the refrigerator. But then, I mean, people had donated all sorts of gift cards for our food, but I don't even know if we had to use many of those. It was like the first, I think the day after we arrived back, somebody was driving up the road with distributing boxed lunches to everybody who was repopulating the area. And they came here and they said, this is as far as we're going to go. We have all these boxed lunches left over. Would you like them? I said, well, is there anybody else you can give them to? It's like, well, no, you're actually the end of the road. We'd like to give them to you. So I don't know how many boxed lunches we had. It's just, you just be here. You think, they're not letting anybody but the residents through on this road. How are we going to get alms food? And alms food comes right there. Anyway, it was pretty astonishing levels of just gratitude for everything that was there. Even the firefighters treated, we're based here, but we thought they might have tracked dirt into our buildings, but they didn't. It's okay. Anyway, it was quite an experience. So, and I also remember, a couple days after returning, Lumpur Pasano said something like, yeah, the challenge is not, we've come back to a monastery that's basically intact. The challenge is how not to let things become normal again, to really keep the lessons of that fire and that uncertainty with us. So, yeah, and again, each of us had our own experience through that event. Those are just some of the highlights of what I can recall. And then in terms of how to work with it in practice, the Buddha used the Buddha used fire as an analogy for and a contemplation in many, many different ways, and more than I'll be able to address here. One of those ways is just seeing the elemental nature of the body. One of the contemplations in the Saṭipatthana Sutta and in the Kayagata Sati Sutta, so both the sutta on the 4 foundations of mindfulness and the sutta on mindfulness of the body talk about contemplating the body in terms of views this same body, however it is placed, however disposed, as composed of elements. Thus, in this body there are the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the air element. And it's that's pretty short, but it's really useful to recollect that, that fire is it's a part of nature. It's inside and it's both inside and outside. And it's just, it's inseparable. Our metabolism is the same as the flames that consumed Tom Kai Road. Just different rates, same chemistry. And this is my understanding is that this is a Mendocino, this area is one of the 2 places on Earth that has a Mediterranean climate, the other being the Mediterranean. And if you have wet winters and dry summers the way we do, you're going to have wildfires. That's just the nature of our climate. So recognizing that this is natural, and in a world that's like this, where do we find refuge? It's a useful contemplation. For as monastics, our training is to see our dwelling as shelter for a night. And I've lived in a log cabin for probably 3 years now. But it's actually, really, certainly when I went to bed that Sunday night, I didn't think that the next night I was going to be packed into 3 Jewels Meditation Hall, and then for the next week over in Annex number 10 of the City of 10,000 Buddha's Great Compassion Hall. But both of those places were certainly suitable shelters for a night. The sense of recognizing the requisites as requisites rather than something to take refuge in. So at this point, I think I may open it up to other questions or reflections people may have. Yeah, Tim.
I was wondering when you learned that people had died and how that affected you, your experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, let's see. I think it's certainly, I definitely heard at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. They were probably announcing that on the television about the Santa Rosa fires, but at that point they may not have even made any announcements because they just didn't know. And for me, I must say, it didn't Yeah, for me, death is still fairly abstract because I've never actually really grieved anybody. It's just a strange, some property of my character, and also just my sort of, well, in some ways, good fortune. So, yeah, it's hard. It's hard for me to, just because of the particulars of my own life, it's hard for me to really, uh, it's hard for me to take that in a way. And so, yeah, I'm very cautious when trying, when when I'm encountering people who have suffered really deep losses, because I know that in a way, my experience of that is still only at an intellectual level. So it didn't, that didn't, that, I mean, I very much recognize it as, as an intellectual level. And the other thing is that, I'm definitely afraid of pain, and getting burned to death is very unpleasant. And so that's, that definitely, you have the reminder, right, you need to, you know, you need to be prepared to die like that. It could happen to you. Um, you know, is my practice up to that? That's something that, that's a reflection that definitely came up. Um, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How close is your kuti to KTY?
KPY? Right. So mine is significantly farther away from KPY than say Tan Pesalo's, which is mine is just up the road here, and the Tan Pesalo and others are on the upper road, and I think that's a I think that road is more approximately halfway up the hill, and KPY starts basically right at the top and over.
You were in this log cabin.
That log cabin, yeah.
That was another way.
No, that's the only. They won't let us build log cabins anymore.
Ajahn, for me, on that day, a lot of what was happening, I was on the phone, like, with a lot of lay supporters, Ajahn Jyotipalo, City of 10,000 Buddhas, like hearing about all this and helping arrange and give information, and like the information, sort of other people wanting to know what's happening, me wanting to know, like going to all the briefings, just being like, and property. For you about that.
Yeah, well, that was the real value of Ajahn Siripanyo's example. That when we got to Willits, into the community center, they had a big television playing at the community center, and there were lots of people watching that. But I didn't even know that until we went in. But Ajahn Siripanyo correctly assessed that we didn't, at that point, we didn't need to know information about what was going on, because other people were taking care of that. And the best way we could help is by maintaining our center. And that was, in some ways, I think my experience might have been quite different if I hadn't seen Ajahn Siripanyo's example on that. And when I got to the city of 10,000 Buddhas, I took more or less the same approach. I stayed away from the information. I could see that other people were taking in all the information that we needed to make good decisions. It's like, okay, that's not a place that I need to contribute. So I tried to stay more, at the heart level, more centered. And, with the reality, we don't know if a Bayagiri has burned down. Well, okay, we don't know. And just stay there, because that was where the real practice would be. Now, it's the people who were keeping track of the information, that was helpful service too. But that time, I didn't assess that I needed to do that. The ranch fire was different in that I was guest monk, and I could see that anxiety. I was guest monk and I was here, and I had to make decisions about what to tell guests who were asking me about whether they could come. When we had evacuated, it was easy. Don't come to a Bayagiri. We don't know what happened. We'll let you know. That was all I needed to say as guest monk. But with the ranch fire, and I could see the greater anxiety of it. And Ajahn Kunadhammo advised me actually I reported that to him, and he advised me, he was keeping track of it, just to stay away from, that I didn't need to keep checking. I eventually did decide to keep checking because the guests kept asking, and some of them were making decisions about how much smoke there would be and whether to come here or not, because they had respiratory troubles, and I wanted to be able to provide them with the best information I could. So, but I could see the difference. In some ways, I had more anxiety that time when I was paying attention and tuned in than than the city of 10,000 Buddhas, where I was, this situation was much more severe in one sense, but I really had the time and space to focus on the heart, and it was a different environment. And that really, in a way, that really shook things up and quite helpful. It's just interesting to remember that the world in the Buddha's definition is, sight, is the eye, the eye and sights, the ear and sounds, and then, the nose and odors, tongue and flavors, body and sensations, and mind and ideas. And so, what affects our heart is what we're experiencing, rather than the actual external reality, whatever that happens to be. Does that address your question? Yeah. In terms of how to, it is challenging, because you were in a position where it was very helpful to be working with all that information and supporting people, and that it does make it more challenging. In some ways, Ajahn Siripanyo and I had the luxury of stepping back from the information. And also, the other thing is that information, I think it'd be quite different if the people who organized and provided our information came from the perspective of Dhamma instead of from a commercial perspective, which really shapes everything about the way that news is reported. That was, yeah. Yeah,
Just further from what Dennis said. I think I remember the morning we were evacuating from San Rosa.
mm-hmm.
Plan A was to evacuate the monastery.
Mm-hmm.
Scenario I kind of practiced in my head for years.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, I'm very glad to plan. And on the way up here, we heard from the elders and said, oh, it's fine railway valley. That was actually my lowest moment of my whole evacuation experience. Oh, I didn't have a plan B. But actually, the information from Dennis was the most helpful. I heard all morning that, so yeah, that's. But I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking in this tradition, forest tradition in general, there's a lot of emphasis on practicing nature.
Mm-hmm.
Learning from nature. Personally found that also being nature helps clear away some of the clutters of the mind that you pick up from the world. Then also I've noticed a lot of people in Northern California, we kind of love nature, this is why we moved here. But that this whole fire experience seemed to have altered that perception. Nature has turned against us. Nature didn't really care what kind of living beings live on it.
Mm-hmm.
Fires come through. And so I wonder if the whole, this change with the way you practice in nature, look at nature, perceive it, kind of a wilderness kind of.
Yeah. And one thing is that for when you really live in the wilderness, like it's a Dao Dum, you realize pretty quickly that the wilderness really doesn't care much about you. You are just one more being in there, and it's a very, yeah. I mean, it's neither sort of malevolent or benevolent. It's just it is what it is, and you actually, in a way, yeah, you use that. If you're going to survive, if you're going to live well, you need to pay attention, and that's the reason why the Thai forest masters really emphasized nature. That because you have to pay attention, and then you can also reflect that one is just a part of nature. So I remember when I was in Dao Dam, I was thinking, well, I'd be up at my diem and I think, I didn't eat enough at the meal. I'm getting really hungry. And I think, well, how many thousands of other hungry beings are out here? Is it really such a big deal? Everything's here is hungry. And it just places it in such a perspective. And to watch the beings eat each other, and that's just what they do. And it's neither pleasant to be hungry nor is it pleasant to be eaten. And it's like, okay, you really start to become disenchanted with life in general. This sort of panoply of hunger and eating, and that's where you really start to dig into the Dhamma, because there's your alternative. Nibbana hungers for nothing. That's really the refuge. So yeah, and it is, and sometimes there's fires at Daodam. They have to fight them almost every year now, and it is a reality that sometimes nature, like today, is extraordinarily pleasant, but it can turn extraordinarily unpleasant really quick. And I mean, that's reality. And if you let that reality into the heart, that's where you can find peace.
But do you think there's kind of the general public's affection for nature? Is it kind of based on that kind of a complacency that we're kind of in control? So nothing bad will happen because we're so civilized and developed.
I mean, the sort of general public perception of nature, just oscillates back and forth between extremes. I mean, when they were cutting down the redwood forests, it was seen as a conquest. It was seen as good. We were. It was only when some people started to figure, oh man, there's not going to be many of these things left, that some people started, sort of conservation movements. You have to protect this stuff. And certainly, I think I read that in pre-modern times, certainly the forest was viewed as generally negative. In Thailand, the forest would be an abode of, ghosts, if you believed in ghosts. But everybody believed in malaria. It was definitely an abode of malaria. Just to, I think there was about a 25% mortality rate for people who tried to get through the forest from central to northeast Thailand because of the malaria. It was so, conquering that forest and cutting it down was seen as a great thing. Whereas now, we live relatively comfortably, and going out in nature is, as you mentioned, tremendously helpful for our modern neuroses. And so we've developed an affection for it as Northern Californians. But I'm guessing that's pretty shallow in a sense. It's not, on a cultural level, it's probably not so well informed. And if things flipped around, we would be, it could change pretty quick. But that's just the way that sort of cultures are. It's I don't. You don't really look to culture for wisdom. It just keeps changing. Okay. So why don't we, as before, take a quick chance to stand up if we want, and then guided meditation next. Okay. Uh, Taking a seated posture. Begin by feeling the ground supporting us. The cushion under our rear, the ground under our thighs or feet. Feeling that solidity. And then letting the spine extend upwards. Yeah. From that base. As if the head were suspended by a string. No need to strain, but feel that upright sense. And then let the remainder of the body relax around, supported by the ground. And held up by the spine. Be helpful to tilt the pelvis forward slightly so that there's a curve in the back, S curve. And then this creates a great wide space to experience the breath in the belly, in the chest, in the neck, and on up into the nasal cavities. And then being aware of the breath. Particularly at the area, in the belly, just below and behind the navel. This is a place where we can experience both the solidity of the earth element, it's close to our support, and the dynamic energy of the wind element, the breath. And we're going to go through some exercises, contemplations, involving the fire element. But during this process, trying to maintain awareness of those qualities of stability and energy right there. And if what I'm saying doesn't resonate with you, or it feels like it's pushing too far, just stay right here. This itself is practice. What, friends, is the fire element? The fire element may be either internal or external. What is the internal fire element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is fiery, and clung to. That is, that by which one is warmed, ages, and is consumed. And that by which what is eaten, drunk, consumed, and tasted gets completely digested. Or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is fiery, and clung to. Now both the internal fire element and the external fire element are simply fire element. And that should be seen as it actually is, with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine. I am not this. This is not myself. When one sees it thus, as it actually is, with proper wisdom, when the mind becomes disenchanted with the fire element, and one makes the mind dispassionate towards the fire element, and one can experience this fire element simply as the temperatures of the body. Some parts are warm, some parts are cool. There's this whole field of temperatures. Of the concept, this is, my body is hot, my body is cold, somewhere in between. But just to experience this field of temperatures. It has a rough shape. But does its shape really match our imagination of our body? The hands, the feet, the lips, the face. The temperatures of these are easy to discern. but the back? Yeah, are there gaps? Becoming aware of this felt sense. This is the experience of the fire element. Now there comes a time when the external fire element is disturbed. It burns up villages, towns, cities, districts, and countries. It goes out due to lack of fuel only when it comes to green grass, a road, or a rock, or to water, or to a clear open space. But at another time, there is so little fuel that people try to make a fire with a cock's feather or with hide parings. When even this external fire element, great as it is seen to be impermanent, subject to destruction, disappearance, and change. What then of this body, which is clung to by craving and lasts but a while? There can be no considering that I, or mine, or I am. just as a space that is enclosed by timber, creepers, grass, and clay comes to be termed house, so too, a space that is enclosed by bones, sinews, flesh, and skin comes to be termed body. If your house is flooded or burnt to the ground, or whatever the threat to it, let it concern only the house. If there's a flood, don't let it flood your heart. If there's a fire, don't let it burn your mind. Let it be only the house, that which is outside of you, that is flooded or burnt. Now is the time to allow the mind to let go of attachments. This is peaceful. This is sublime. That is the stilling of all activities, the relinquishment of all acquisitions, the destruction of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. bringing the mind back to the sensation of the breath. Feeling the body. Experiencing the heart. Reflecting. What is the effect of these contemplations? And as we near the end of this meditation session, bringing the mind back to the body, and then gradually opening the eyes, take in forms, but no need to look around and label yet. Just forms, light, color, space. Back to being a body sitting in a room among friends. Oh yeah, closing, just in closing, there's many different ways to contemplate an experience like this fire, this evacuation. And it's helpful to reflect for yourself which ways are beneficial and which ways either are just don't seem to work. And as Lumpur Pasano urged us to do, just not letting things go back to normal. At least, there's a very, normal is often diluted. And how to use extraordinary situations to rethink what normal is.